connection first. We must have connection first. All of this getting done doesn't matter if we're not connected.
The gift of this group and this community is that I was able to be with this nice part in a setting that was safe enough for me to start trusting that other people really could take care of themselves.
It's like we recreated, in some ways, the energetic environment of our family of origin.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the True You podcast. I have a couple of my co-authors, Allison, Dyer and Islena Faircrest, with us today to talk about the Parts Work Guidebook, which has been released in the Kindle version as of this recording, and soon will be released in the paperback. And we just want to talk about the writing of that book and how it relates to the true you for each of us. And I'm wondering, let's hear your voices. So Islena, just to say hello to everybody.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
And Allison.
Hi. So happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about the book with two of my co-writers.
And of course, my co-host, Dr. Martin Kettlehut, Marty, is going to introduce the two of you. Marty, you want to say hello to everybody?
I just noticed as they introduced them, their voices, we have an alto and a soprano.
Yeah.
And what are you?
I'm a baritone.
And I used to be a tenor. I think I'm a baritone now, too.
There we go. We got a beautiful barbershop quartet.
We do. That's awesome.
I don't think we're going to sing to the audience, however.
No, let's not.
Okay, well, I would love to introduce our two guests to the audience. Islena Faircrest is an IFS trained practitioner specializing in somatic IFS and relational attachment-based healing. When she's not momming with family and sandwich generation responsibilities, she loves teaching yoga on paddleboard, therapeutic movement, and nervous system healing. Quite a bio.
I can't even stand on a paddleboard.
I know. What's
on it.
part of doing yoga on a paddleboard? That's Allison is also a certified IFS practitioner. Her focus is on building relationships in our inner world so that we may have a positive impact on the outside world. She's exploring the idea of connecting with the wisdom of our soul and our humanity. Loves learning and going deep into the world of imagination. So that's who we've got as guests today.
And welcome to both of you. So, Marty, it occurs to me that it might be good to have you take the lead on this conversation and essentially interview us, since we represent 60% of the authorship of this new book called the Parts Work Guidebook. Yeah, you get your copy of Allison too. And we'd love to tell you all about what we experienced as we were writing it over the course of the last 37 years.
I was just going to say it was like a 4-year pregnancy.
Uh-huh.
We started when we were all in high school.
That's right.
Yeah. That's right.
That's
longest pregnancy on the face of the planet.
How did it get started? I mean, how did it come to even start as a project for all of you?
Maybe that's a good question for Allison, since she was right there at the beginning with me. And then Islena, you joined a little bit after, or were you there? No, you weren't there right at the beginning. Okay.
Not at the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it started because Bill and I and Islena, we also, we run a group called Parts Work Practice, which is why the book was written. It's the exercises that the group does. We started using the workbook by Weiss with her permission. And over time, we realized that we're actually spending a lot of time kind of reformulating the exercises to fit our particular group. So one of our writers, Noga, I think she kind of said it in jest even. She says, hey, why don't we write our own book? And we're all like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's write our own book. I was thinking, yeah, a year tops will be done. So we started writing it. We had some different writers at the time. We had like a project manager. She was with us for a while. We had a couple of other writers who were part of the team, and it was just not coalescing very well. And so Bill and I decided we're just going to kind of go off on a different direction. Some of the writers stayed with us, some of them dropped away. Islena joined us then later. And then, as you have heard, the longest pregnancy ever, we are at the finished product. And it was at least 4 years of writing. Bill and I would sometimes meet on a Thursday. We would do some just basic outline type writing, take it back to all the other writers. They would edit it. We would have a great conversation. And then we kind of wrote the book that way for the most part. Did I answer that well enough, Bill?
I think so. Yeah. We thought it was a great idea. And I still think it was a great idea. We started out with one approach. We thought, wouldn't it be great if we had someone to help us kind of organize the work? So we asked Kathleen Hogue, I believe that is her last name, to help us. And she kind of specialized in that in her career. I believe she was retired by then. And just was a project manager and helped us to organize and create a project. And she did a beautiful job. However, months went by and we really hadn't written anything yet because we were very busy preparing. And at one point during one of our meetings, one of us was complaining about how tedious it was to do all the setup to get ready to write this book together. And Kathleen's response was, well, if you think this has been hard, wait till you start writing. You remember that?
I remember your face. I thought your head was going to explode and mine was going to follow you.
Yeah. Well, it felt like my head was going to explode. And I think I don't think I even hesitated. I just said, well, then I'm done. Mm-hmm. And that's nothing against Kathleen. She did what we asked her to do, and she did an amazing job with it. But I had nothing left in me. So this is probably maybe not the first time that parts had gotten activated around the whole process. My parts had been getting impatient and frustrated for probably weeks prior to this experience. Mm-hmm. So that a very dominant, angry, frustrated, impatient part kind of just jumped out of me and said, that's it, I'm done. And I was serious, and all my parts agreed at that point.
I was just clearing my throat.
No, that's such a great kind of segue or trailhead to what the book gave us as a process, as a writing team. Bill, thanks for sharing that, because I did come into the project about a year in, so I missed the initial phase of what Allison and Bill are talking about. I actually believe I came in as Kathleen was transitioning out, because I do remember a couple meetings around that time. Okay. And so that's possible. And I do remember you discussing, Bill, how this feels real for me, the doneness of it, right? Mm-hmm. And just like the amount of energy required for preparation. And I'll just kind of briefly describe kind of an overview experience of the remaining years of writing the book in our group of five. Is that a quadra group? I don't know. I don't know. What's that? Quinta group. Thank you. What's a five-sided shape? Is that I noticed that it brought forward all of our kind of coping strategies and managers from our childhood family of origin environment. Yep. And that now I can look back and see, wow, that's fascinating how as a group we came together, and because the work required such depth for us to do together, it's like we recreated in some ways the energetic environment of our family of origin. Mm. And so the triggers that we experienced with each other, because of these remembrances coming up and coming forward as we interacted with each other relationally, creating the content, mm-hmm. It's like the writing of the book allowed us to re-experience and use the material to heal these younger parts, and then use our younger parts, well, not use, I don't mean it in a negative way, but kind of like utilize what's the scaffolding in our system, mm-hmm. of our conditioning, mm-hmm. to create the material for the book. So it was this really cool.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. That's, oh my gosh.
Were there times where you actually let's do the exercise that we wrote?
Oh yeah,
Yes,
all
we
the
did.
time.
All the time. I think almost every single
Almost
time.
every single one. Yeah, and we have
Oh,
in the
that's
books. Oh, go ahead, Marty.
That's really is. So, I mean, in order not only to test the exercise, but to solve whatever conflicts were arising amongst you.
That's right.
I,
Yep.
Yeah.
so there might be people listening who I wonder what kind of book is this that you could be writing it and using it to write as a team at the same time. So I want to hear more about the experience of writing it eventually, but for the audience, what is a parts work practice book?
Guidebook.
Guide,
Yeah.
guidebook.
Yeah. So can I answer this one, or would one of you like to? Okay.
Go
So
for it, Bill.
as Allison was saying, Bonnie Weiss had written a workbook called the Self-Therapy Workbook with her husband, Jay Earley, who had written the Self-Therapy book. And it was all about IFS. And it was a great tool, I thought, and Allison agreed that to use in Parts Work Practice, our free practice group that we offered starting back in January of 2021. And but we found that we were having to rewrite, to reorganize the exercises that she had offered in her self-therapy workbook in order to present it in the Parts Work Practice sessions. Well, Bonnie Weiss wrote the self-therapy workbook. Our book has 23, it ended up with 24 exercises in it. We use 23 of them in Parts Work Practice. And these exercises are all designed to help anybody, even if they don't know anything at all about IFS, internal family systems, to learn how to do parts work, how to get into relationship with their parts, how to notice the influence of their own parts, how to begin to separate from that influence and be an observer of it, how to begin to be in relationship with these different parts of themselves, and then how to thereby affect a change. And that changes. The goal isn't change. The goal is self-leadership. So I guess that's a change, which means that we're going to shift from being managed and controlled by our parts and then trying to manage and control ourselves accordingly. We're going to shift from that to leading our lives from the essence of who we are, which IFS calls self. And this book is about how to do that. And but someone that doesn't know anything about IFS starts at the beginning of the book, and by the time they finish exercise 23, if they do all the exercises, they're going to have a pretty good acuity around the IFS model and parts work. Plus, they'll have this huge shift in how they perceive themselves and how they interact with and relate to the rest of the world.
It's like writing such a thing as like doing yoga on a paddleboard. It's a double conundrum. Like, oh my gosh, what sort of challenges did you have writing this book as a group? Do you want to talk about how this was similar or different to the experience of writing
and
the
that's
book?
what I was just commenting about. That what I'm experiencing inside right now, after the frustrating experience that we just now had, is very similar to what I felt at times when we were trying to write the book with 5 authors.
And Islena said that's an example of staying with sensation. So that feeling.
Yeah, when we had activations while we were writing the exercises together or editing them, it was often actually editing that could bring up activations as well, because 5 different nervous systems that come from 5 different families of origin and 5 different cultures have 5 different coping strategies and responses to the environment. So because of that, you're getting different ways of problem solving working together. And when something occurred, like in this example, the tech challenge, that could activate one of our 5 nervous systems or some of our 5 nervous systems, what would show up is our protectors, whether managers, proactive, or firefighters, reactive. And so in these either proactive or reactive protectors, that were protecting vulnerable parts within us that either felt not good enough or we were bad and wrong, working together with 5 different nervous systems, it was like a process of like, how do these different styles work together and create content together? And I would say in the beginning, it brought up our woundings, because there was often misunderstandings, and we were all coming from places of good intent, like great care and great care and good intent, and a desire to create something meaningful together. So we're all coming from great places. But as my dad used to say growing up, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. It was one of my favorites of his. That, and I need that like I need a hole in the head. Thanks, Dad. That was a good old-fashioned German pragmatism, right? But just like in this example of a tech challenge, it would bring up parts within us that, like vulnerable parts, which are the exiles in IFS, that feel, oh, I'm doing something bad or wrong, or I got it wrong, or I don't understand, or not good enough, or unworthy. And then our protectors would come forward to protect us if we were not able to kind of mate each other or see or really witness each other. So I think what we were able to do as a group is build self-awareness together as we came to learn and recognize each other's different learning styles, work styles, expression and creativity styles. Like, yeah, that's it in a nutshell for me. I don't know what you guys want to add.
So Allison was the one that was struggling with the audio, and we all were trying to help her, of course. Just now. So what was that like for you just now, and how does that compare to what you experienced in the writing process, Allison?
That's a great follow-up to this experience, because what I noticed in me was a part of me that wanted to like disappear, go away. Like, I'm the problem. I'm screwing up the time. Very mindful of Bill's timekeeper parts. I have my own timekeeper parts. I'm like, oh, shoot, I'm messing up the podcast. So that was that part. My overriding activation was that feeling of, oh man, I'm in the way. And they're having to accommodate me, which is really uncomfortable for a lot of my parts. I also noticed some gratitude and surprise that since I was talking mostly to Bill was like, because I offered, just go without me. No, I'm just too much trouble, blah, blah, blah. And Bill's like, no. And I could see you guys are like, no. God damn, I'm sorry. Like, but there was some appreciation underneath that, though. And the message getting through, which for me was part of the repair process of this group, is that everybody, whoever was the one that was causing the activation or the people's response to it, at the end of the day, all those parts were really welcomed in this group. And that's something that in the midst of this particular activation, I could rest on that. I could let my parts do what they need. I still have parts that feel bad about it, but I'll deal with that because I didn't. Anyway, I'm going to ramble about that. But what I'd like to say is that's another part I get scattered inside when I'm activated. And so there's this part of me that's just still on that, tense energy. For sure. I'm still noticing that. But really a lot of gratitude that you guys all stuck with me. That's really important for my parts and my system. Wasn't my experience growing up. So I think that's a gift from this group, because I know Bill and Islena so well, and I know that it's genuine, and I could see Bill's stubbornness. It's like, no, you're not going away. We're going to fix it. So, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, and for sticking with it in the face of the scramble that was going inside.
Yeah, because I don't. Bill and Islena knows I don't do well with technology when it doesn't go well. I get really frazzled, and so I was feeling that energy of just like, oh shit, I don't know what to do. That was part of my wanting to run away. It's like, I don't know, I'll just leave.
Bill, what was the feeling? You said, well, this felt a lot like when we were writing the book. What was that feeling for you?
And it is past tense. It is past already. And I think something that's noteworthy here is that there's a couple of things that bring about a return to, let's just say, regulation, to that inner calm. And that one, for me, one of them is humor. Islena had just said something about, thanks, Dad. All I need is another hole in the head, is what your dad used to say. Well, my dad and I are Irish, and my dad would add something. He would say, all I need is another hole in my head.
Yeah.
And so humor was something that we would use as we were writing the book to lift ourselves out of that tension that we were all experiencing
Yeah.
in the way that each of us uniquely did. Often, for example, I was often the one that was typing and sharing a screen as we were doing editing, and we might have a sentence that we all had agreed that we could go ahead and accept this particular sentence instead of the one that we had just spent the last 30 minutes not liking very much. And I would type something on the screen as it, knowing everybody's watching what I'm typing and expecting me to type what we'd all agreed to, and I would type something completely different, sometimes with profanity in it. And
Lots of profanity.
Lots of profanity.
and that would just melt the tension, for me at least, and it felt like for the entire group as well.
Oh yeah, it was great.
And another thing that helped my system often would be to have any one of the other 4 authors step in with a calm presence. When, despite whatever might have just happened, where I was clipped and short in my frustration and clearly showing my frustration and my impatience, a calm voice would come in and make a suggestion. Like, what if we just take a moment right now, and what if we actually do this exercise? Somebody might say. Often that was Islena or Noga or Allison or Morgan. And just in that few minutes, I would find myself back to regulation. And instead of feeling shame for being impatient, which was one of my go-tos and still can be, I would just be grateful for the support, get back into my own self-energy again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the humor piece of it is hugely important, but part of what brought me back in the whole fiasco with my earbuds was the conversation. I have a great Pyrenees who was barking, and Bill saying some snarky thing about what to do with the earpods and my dog, and Marty did a little bit. And that was just, I made a comment to my husband, yeah, he's afraid I'm coming back and forth, and he just kind of made a funny face like, yeah, I am. Those little touch points of humor also are really, really helpful just to kind of get me out of that stress.
Right.
Something I noticed in our rupture and repair process as a team writing the book together is that we became like a pseudo family pretty quick, in the sense that we became quite intimate with each other's protector parts, whether managers or firefighters, and shadow parts, which are often firefightery in nature, that kind of reactive, like subconscious reactive. And so it felt like we got to do like a crash course in intimacy with each other, because intimacy includes the ruptures and the shadow parts, and like I like to use this example of the 7-year itch. Like, it takes usually 5 to 7 years in any relationship to get to know someone's shadow parts. That's why the first few years in most relationships are the honeymoon years, and then you think everything's great and hunky-dory, and then you get to know all of the person that you're in a relationship with. But doing this writing and exercises, creating together as a team, it kind of turbo sped that relational process, and we got to know each other's shadow parts faster, and I don't say shadow parts negatively. I just mean like those parts that we tend to hide, from people until we're in intimate relationship with them and we can no longer hide them. Right. So that, I think, is what was really cool about, for me, I'll just speak on my personal experience. I was like, oh, I'm so recognizing patterns of me young in my family of origin coming forward quite faster than they would have in like my intimate relationships, right? With like my chosen partner or something like that. I was like, wow, they came forward much faster. And because we're also in a space, an intentionally created space to navigate that and use the exercises to process through that. So that was cool for me.
Really?
Very interesting to me. How did you navigate? Like, you could have spent enormous time just go, okay, let's just drop the book and spend time on this person or on this issue that we're having. How did you manage, like doing enough internal family systems work on yourself with getting the book itself produced?
Great question.
I can answer that partially, and then you guys can fill in the rest. So, like, from my experience, it felt like the exercises, or sorry, I'll start with like any activations we may have had became the work, and then the work was able to hold our experience. And then we could use our experience to enrich the exercises and the work. So it went back and forth like that for me, anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
I also,
Marvelous.
I also remember the times though where we really had to face that head on, because there's a part in our writing group that we were getting a lot of activation and we were spending a lot of time dealing with people. And so we decided as a group that we needed to write more of an agenda. We needed a little bit of an outline or a structure. And so we would spend a lot of time building that structure. And so we would say, okay, you have like a 2-minute check-in, or we have 5 minutes to work if someone needs support, but that's all. And trusting us to go outside of the group to get the support and help we need. So over time, we really had to refine that agreement. It would change when we were writing. It changed when we were in the editing process. So I think that was part of what helped create the safety, though, was the structure of that.
Yeah.
Because we learned that there was more of an onus on each individual writer to take care of their own parts, knowing that when they show up for this group, there's support for activation for sure, but we trusted everybody else to be able to tend to their own system. And that helped me and my caretaker part relax. When I started to trust that that part of me didn't have to jump in, the caretaker be a therapist, that was part of our agreement. And having it as a written agreement was helpful for my system to stay boundaried, like to stay in my own lane. We were mindful of how activated we could get. So we're very intentional about creating exercises that would have as much support for the participant as we could. That was my takeaway.
That's great. Yeah, I'm sure that it, made the book much better. I'm wondering how did it make you all better? Like, did this accelerate your own personal development, or did it slow it down, or what?
Yeah, it certainly did for me. I mean, one of my favorite parts in my entire internal world is my get her done part. This part has me so productive. But like any parts with good intentions, that are coming from burdened energy. So this get her done part is not always coming from burdened energy. In fact, it's in the flow most of the time. But when someone steps in front of it, of this part and slows it down, it gets activated. Now it's responding from its burden. And suddenly I'm blended with this part, that's get her done part, that's responding from its burden. And I no longer see the present moment as it is. I see it as it used to be, or as this part was afraid it might be. What I learned was that I needed to slow down long enough to really get to know this part and understand what it's trying to accomplish for me. It's not simply let's get a lot of stuff done. I wanted to know why. Why is it so important to get so much done and to get it done now? And one of the things I learned from this part about the part and the dilemma that it's trying to resolve is that because there was never a true connection established early in my life, I didn't know what it felt like to actually be connected to another human being. What I did know was that when I didn't feel loved and when I didn't feel connection, I could at least settle for crumbs. And those crumbs were approval, accolades, appreciation, respect for what I could accomplish. And like Allison, in my own way, I became a caretaker too. But the caretaker that I became was not loving and compassionate. The caretaker that I became was impatient with those that were being victimized by the same people I was trying to survive, my parents. And so I became very impatient with the very people I was trying to protect because they kept poking the bear. And that came up for me over and over and over and over in this writing process. So I would need to schedule 1 hour IFS sessions with my own therapist or practitioner so that I could work with these parts that came up, particularly this one, the get her done part, and the exile parts that it was trying to manage and protect.
Mm.
And so,
I love that.
So having gone through that now, do you find that, you know, when you're in get her done mode in other contexts that there's more facility?
Absolutely. When I feel that
Mm.
tension rising inside and like a critical part comes up that says, here they go again, causing problems. This other person over here that I've been trying to help, not only do they not notice and recognize and appreciate all the great things I'm doing for them, but they're actually now standing in the way and poking the bear. So now they deserve my wrath. So this
Danger, danger. Poke, poke.
yeah. So now I've negotiated with this, it's really the get her done part that triggers the critical part, that criticals the judge, that triggers the punisher. And if I can cut that whole process off at early on, where I begin to feel that tension from the get her done part, and remind it, connection first. We must have connection first. All of this getting done doesn't matter if we're not connected. Then the part says, oh yeah, thanks for the reminder. And I pause and get connected again.
Well, that's great. It's kind of like one of the things I learned summary. I would love to ask both Allison and Islena the same question. What's a takeaway? It's what I learned about myself. You want to go first, Allison?
Sure. I think my takeaway is the nice part I have, and that part of me that feels like I have to be everybody's therapist. And that part really got activated a lot in various different, like Bill's activation, the get her done part, or other writers' activations. I could feel that it's like this forward, like, oh crap, I got to go in there and fix it. I got to make sure everybody's okay. I gotta do something. In parallel to that caretaking in this group, I was in the thick of elder care. So I had that part was hugely activated in two different spaces of my life. And the gift of this group and this community is that I was able to be with this nice part in a setting that was safe enough for me to start trusting that other people really could take care of themselves. It really wasn't my job. And for me, like I said earlier, the structure we had with our agendas and our agreement really helped me stay in my own lane, help that part relax enough. And I also got to practice when that part got activated. And Bill and I were co-founders of Parts Work Practice group. And he and I worked together for years now. He's been a huge help for my nice part, because this get or done part gets activated by me, or was quite a bit sometimes. And so I learned to be with my nice part. And the fear that would come up when I would feel Bill's anger, I could be with my nice part and really update her. It's like, well, Bill can have that part of him. And I understood that part. So it was helpful for me to stay with compassion, but it also helped me to have compassion for my parts. Because that energy that get her done was familiar. That energy was familiar in my growing up family of origin. So it was a very familiar energy when it was directed at me. And I had a whole slew of parts that knew what to do with that. So that was probably the most helpful relationship of all of them, because Bill and I also had two different groups.
It's probably seemed like compounding, but it also sounds like it was helpful in that sense that you could use what you were learning in both contexts.
It was helpful because I really did. With the group at large, when there was a breakdown in communication, whether it was Bill or anybody else.
So I would say my experience in recognizing perhaps new aspects of my system that I had not recognized as well before, and what I learned the most about my system by being a part of this project is my mediator parts growing up, and my appeasing, people-pleasing parts, and also my avoidant attachment, that when things got challenging or problematic, my lone wolf part that cuts out and isolates could get activated. Not all the time, but sometimes. There was a couple specific incidents that it showed up, and I noticed my system retreat, isolate, unplug, and go into avoidance. So fortunately, through IFS, the practice of IFS, I'm able to recognize this avoidance attachment within me and literally utilize the exercises to reparent it. And so we did, as Allison says, we got really good at contending to our own activated parts.
Right.
And that came as part of the process in writing the book together. Is we did create more structure, and that structure held what otherwise could devolve into time lost on doing parts work that would take away from us creating the content and writing the material and exercises for the book.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of this fine line between, supporting and nurturing each other, but then also realizing, hey, we have an outcome, a desired outcome that we're creating together here. So in a way, it's kind of like we got to grow up together. Our young parts got to grow up together because they're attached to a project that there's a desired outcome, and we have a responsibility towards the project and to each other to complete it together, because that's what we intended with each other.
Well,
right?
I think there's another whole book.
Yeah,
That someone else will write.
I know we need to wrap up, but I want to thank you all for the generosity and the creativity and that willingness to come together for a common purpose that it took to get this book out so that the rest of the world could do the good work that you did and become familiar with and friendly with and caring of all their parts. Thanks for that.
You're welcome, Marty. Maybe before we end, I'd like to point one more thing out in the book, if I could. Islena got the idea halfway through the process, I think, that maybe we should add some, when we tried this exercise, prompts at the end of an exercise. And so I'd like to share one of those now. This is out of chapter 5, exercise 15, and this exercise is called Self and Protectors. And the exercise is designed to help you develop a trust-based relationship between protectors and self. So here's what this is what Islena wrote about our experience. The group noticed that their own individual parts get activated in refining this exercise together, got activated. And the beliefs of their burdened parts depleted the collective energy to engage towards editing the exercise. Allison had parts activated by what felt to them was unimportant editing minutia when compared to what was happening in her own home country and the world post-election and amid war. Pushing that were parts that held a lot of anger and wanted to lash out. That's usually what I did. That was one unique thing. Now I'll continue. So Bill had enough capacity, and in parentheses, self-energy, to measure his responses before they escaped from his exile part. He had parts that were extremely frustrated and impatient with the process. However, seeing Allison's frustration, watching her face, and hearing her hijacking parts, he relaxed his parts sufficiently to let her do the heavy lifting in the moment. Morgan noticed a part that felt, it's always me that people get frustrated with, which is true. It is always her. That's not true. That was just to make you laugh, Morgan. It's always me that people get frustrated with. So the part took it personally when others became frustrated. She also noticed a neurodiverse part that didn't understand some of the nuances in language that neurotypical people understand. This part helps Morgan by guessing at what's going on. That was, by the way, very enlightening for me, that learning about neurodiversity in this way. And then finally, Islena noticed that a defensive part got activated, which protects her. I don't belong exile part that you were just talking about. The belief this part holds had her system regress to feeling like she was 7 years old again, getting punished by a teacher. So I hope that you'll get the book, Parts Work Guidebook. I hope that it changes your life, because if it does, that change will be lasting and sustainable. It's not something that you have to continue to remember how to do. your system learns how to do it, and it does it for you just as automatically as it hijacks you now.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us, Islena. Thanks for joining us, Allison. And thanks for hanging in there despite the technical difficulties.
Yeah.
And Marty, thanks for facilitating the conversation. All right. Till next week. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye. All. We appreciate who you are, that you would be listening to this podcast, and want to acknowledge all those parts of you that yearn for the experience of the true you.
If you like this episode, click like, share it with others, and be sure to subscribe. Listen again next week for the newest episode.
Check show notes for a transcript and a link to resources, including a link to let us know if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast.
Thank you for listening and going on this journey with us back to the true you.